Cold weather and cold decks lately here at the Peppermill. I mentioned the fact that there have been 3 hands this month where I flopped the nut flush and I managed to lose in all 3 of them. But you know what? That's not what I want to point out, because those kind of things just happen. I want to focus on what I can control. And the fact of the matter is, after a losing month in January, I've had 10 consecutive winning months going into December where I am staring down the barrel of a losing month here. And I'm not blaming those 3 hands with the nut flush. I'm blaming 2 hands where I flopped 2 pair. And the fact of the matter is, I was up against better hands in 2 of those. One of them made a vlog where a maniac turned the nut flush. The other one did not make a vlog where a guy who was capable of getting it in bad happened to flop it straight when I flopped 2 pair, and I just could not get away in a spot where I probably should have. So I guess that's the simple lesson to point out. Do not get married to 2 pair. In fact, if you ask me, I'd say just don't get married at all. We actually start off the coverage of Vlog 145 a day earlier, when there were a couple of things I was going to point out. The first came when I was the beneficiary of a big-time cooler, raising pocket kings to a king-9 rag board, and finding myself up against king-9. So I got close to a full double up in that hand, and then a hand that wasn't nearly as big, but I can't help but mention it, because in Vlog 144, I dubbed the Queen-Jack suited as the Mac, a legendary 88-year-old OMC who has either A, never played that hand in 60 years of live poker, or B, has simply never been dealt it. And I'm just not sure which one that is. We played this hand in that vlog, and, as you saw, didn't go well as a result. So you know what this is. This is the return of the Mac. And as fate would have it, this hand comes against an OMC, one who had commented that I wouldn't be playing any hands as a result of doubling up in that king's hand. He opens 20 early position, and I call on the hijack, and the button comes in as well. So it's 60 in, it comes king 10 deuce rainbow, giving me an open-ender. The OMC bets 25, and I make the call with the button folding. And with 110 in, the turn comes the 3 of hearts, bringing in the possibility of a backdoor heart draw. So the question is, should I bluff raise here or wait till the river? He has about 500 left, meaning that he's winning on the day, because, of course, OMCs typically buy in very short. I figured I'd see if I could hit my hand, or plan on definitely representing hearts should they come in, or, of course, the simple possibility of just betting big if he checks, regardless of what comes in. He bets 50, and I just call. So with 210 in, the river is the 7 of hearts. So I miss my draw, but the hearts have come in, and sure enough, he checks. I decide to go ahead with the bluff. I make it 150. He thinks about it for only a few seconds and folds, claiming to have had a pair of kings. I don't know if that means ace-king, but probably a hand close to it. So we end up booking a win on Thursday, and then we transition into the Friday session. I sit down in the 7th seed on Christmas Eve and immediately lose the first 3 hands I play, and then a hand took place that is worse than losing. I don't care what anyone says. At Peppermill, there's only one big blind. And I've always made a point to not look at my cards when I'm in the big blind until it gets to me, because if it were to fold to me, and I were to wake up with a massive hand, it's a negative free roll. Right? All you do is get pissed off, and there's nothing that can come of it that's good. But for some reason, in this spot, I decided to look and was punished for doing so in the worst way, seeing the 2 aces. I do get on the scoreboard, raising pocket queens under the gun and getting 3 callers, all of which who folded the flop. And then The low jack opens to 15, and I have king jack in the cutoff and make the call, as does the big blind. So with 45 in, the flop is ace, deuce, 3, 2 clubs, and the action checks around. The turn's a king. The original raiser bets 20, which to me really felt like king, queen, or a weak ace. This player also had just doubled up on a quads versus full house cooler and was unlikely to want to lose that money back so quickly. So with that in mind, despite the possibility of me just having the best hand, I opt to turn this into a bluff, making it 70, as I really didn't think the hand was going to be good all that often. He thinks about it for about 10 seconds and mucks. I then proceed to flop the nut flush draw, and as you shouldn't be too shocked to hear, did not hit it, and lost about $320 trying to do so when I went up against pocket kings. I do believe I would have been paid off if I had hit it, but I don't think I'd have gotten a fold should I have tried to semi-bluff that draw. I didn't get it on tape, but I played a weak suited queen on the button in a limped pot and flopped a queen high flush. Thankfully, the board paired though, and my opponent somewhat freaked out because he flopped the nut flush. So my luck when it comes to flopping flushes continues to be below average. A new game develops on table 5. I get on the move list, but no one is leaving. So I stick around in this mediocre game on table 1, and we get a $10 under the gun straddle and +2 calling. I have 10s in the low jack, and make it 35, to which the hijack calls. The button calls, and +2 completes, so with 140 in, the flop is 8, deuce, 3, a rainbow, and I bet $75. Of these 3, the button is my only caller, and with 290 in, the turn is another deuce. I bet 100 here, and he raises all in for 350. This is never a bluff. I make a very quick fold, and he ends up showing me pocket eights for a flopped top set. My table change is then granted, but the lineup was not what I'd hoped it was when I initially got on the list, though it was a slight improvement to where I was at, and I was stuck about 400 or so at that point. With 6 players dealt in, the cutoff limps, and I have pocket kings on the button and make it 20, fearing 2 folds. Instead, I get 2 calls. Not sure why I was scared there. And the big blind and cutoff come along. So with 60 in, it comes jack, 7 deuce, 2 hearts, and gets checked to me. I bet 30, and the big blind raises to 60, and the cutoff folds. I elect to just call here and see what happens on the turn. It comes an offsuit queen, but she doesn't bet. I figured that I had the green light to bet here. I make it 80, and she folds almost immediately, claiming that she had a jack. I then picked up king-queen and flop top pair, getting value on the flop and value on the turn before checking an ace river, and my opponent announced that he just had aces up. Ugh. And if that wasn't bad enough, this hand happened that I didn't get video of. I picked up the 8-10 of diamonds and found myself on the turn with a pair of 8s, an open-ended straight draw, and a flush draw. Now, it turned out I was up against a set when this happened, so chances are either I am going to hit my hand on the river and make money, or miss and not lose much money. Instead, option 3 occurs. I hit a third 8 instead of either draw. So I bet fold the river, losing 150 more and about 300 in the hand on a disastrous river card for me. So I was slightly tilted, and I tried to walk it off while listening to the latest Quest Live Poker podcast as I meandered the second floor at Peppermill. I also learned something for some reason I never really knew, and that's that the pool is heated, something I've simply never paid attention to despite spending countless days in this particular casino. I then went to the gift shop, somewhat pleased to see that they have now added beef jerky sticks, but very displeased with the $17 price tag, so I pass. I jump back in and immediately lose a few small pots. Then, playing 5-handed, I pick up 7-8 of hearts under the gun and make it 15, getting 3 colors. With 60 in, we see a flop of 10-5-3, 2 hearts, and I bet 35 with only the cutoff coming along. With 125 in, the turn is the 6 of diamonds. So now I have an open-ended straight draw and a flush draw. I bet a black chip, and she tosses in one of her own. So at 325 in, the river is another 5, leaving me with 8 high. But in the spirit of the greatest Christmas movie ever, I'm not giving up.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Now, she's never going to be slow playing anything here. She's the type who really hates getting drawn out on and always prices out the draws when she flops a good hand. So it seemed likely that she also had a draw here, and if she did have a 10, I think I can bet her off one. I make it 180, and almost instantly, she tosses her cards into the muck. Then a young girl who is a very tough opponent, but rarely plays a hand, opens 20 under the gun. Typically, I would lay down the king 7 of spades in the big blind given those circumstances, but in this case, I don't because 4 other people call in between. And with 120 in, the dealer is good enough to put out king jack 7, 2 diamonds, giving me top and bottom, and I look to check raise. Original raiser checks, and it gets checked to the hijack, who bets 50. The cutoff is a gentleman from the town of Truckee, California, who calls as well. I put in 2 black chips, and the original bettor tanks, but decides not to continue. The cutoff, though, back ships all in for $400 more. This is almost never going to be a hand that beats me, but it's also rarely going to be a hand that's in terrible shape against me. Either way, we have to call. The pot is bigger than 1,500, so we are allowed to run it twice, which he agrees to do, telling me that he just has a flush draw. First board runs out with no diamond, so we go to board number 2, looking to win the entire pot. The turn is a diamond, so we would need a king or a 7 to scoop this entire pot, and there's just no way that that is going to ever happen. I'm not even going to ask you to jam that like button here because I've already locked up half the pot, and I don't want to get too greedy asking for that. It would be just too good to be true that that could ever happen here. Until it does! Someone call the authorities! We've seen some shit that is beyond belief!
Attention, whoever you are, this channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
No fucking shit, lady! Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
So we win that hand, but unfortunately, it only gets us back to even on the day, which takes us to this hand. The girl that I mentioned was basically not playing any hands, grinding it out basically all day, which she's been doing now for like the last month at Peppermill, which has been somewhat befuddling to me. Anyway, she got involved with this one. Playing 7-handed, I pick up pocket aces in the cutoff and make it 10, not wanting the big blind to fold. Now, the girl I mentioned, she's on the button to my immediate left and decides to come along. The big blind then 3-bets to 45, which is obviously what I wanted to see. But the problem is I know this guy a little bit. I don't think he's going to have a big hand here all that often, and I want a chance to win a big pot here. So I don't want to lose this guy. And the back raise, while some will interpret it differently, many will interpret it as a huge sign of strength, and I wasn't sure which would apply here. So I decide to continue my slow play here, something that, as you know, I rarely do, but in this position, I thought that it was going to work out. So I just call, assuming that this girl on the button probably is not going to call, and obviously if she does, I'm a 4-1 favorite against any hand. This is another example of the fact that I can't show you what I wish I'd done. I can only show you what I did. So she does call, and with 135 in, the flop is 6, deuce 3, 2 spades. Big blind leads out for 85, just as I'd hoped for, and I am going to raise right now, making it 200, assuming the button is going to fold. Assuming the button is going to fold, but the button cold calls. The big blind, the guy who I wanted to be playing this hand against, he folds. So this has become a very bizarre situation, and not the one, obviously, that I had in mind. But still, I got aces. It's a 6-high board. I like my chances. With 620 in, the turn is an offsuit jack. I don't see any way she could ever have pocket jacks here because she's going to re-raise that pre-flop. I bet $315, and pretty quickly, she calls. With 1,250 in, the river is an offsuit 3 pairing the board. Spades have bricked out. There's a lot of spade draws she could have here. The likelihood that she has an overpair, of course, as I mentioned, is diminished given the pre-flop action. Before I did anything here, I had basically already arrived at the conclusion that she either had a full house or a missed flush draw. Either way, that means I should check to her, which is what I proceed to do. I also know that regardless of which one of those two things she has, she's going to bet. Not that I've seen her bluff a lot, but I would assume this would be a must bluff for her if she did brick out on a flush draw. She announces 700, tossing in a hockey puck. Now, I have the ace of spades in my hand. That's obviously bad for me, blocking her from having the nut flush draw. And if she's going to call $315 on the turn, chances are she's not going to have too many lower flush draws. But I also found myself thinking that she's probably going to want to raise most of her sets on the turn, given the fact that I could have a lot of flush draws given my line pre-flop. And she'd want to get value before I'd brick out. But I wasn't sure of that. So I was very torn on this decision. Ultimately, I would think it's the toughest decision I had with a hand like pocket aces in all of 2021. This was a tough one. It could go either way. Not sure how many you would call here. Not sure how many you would fold here. Like I say, I don't know the player all that well, but I know her pretty well enough to know she's a grinder, does not want to get money in bad. So after thinking about it for a couple of minutes, much longer than I actually want to hold the game up to think about a hand, I basically just closed my eyes and folded, assuming that I was never going to know if I was right in this instance or not. But I do find out she does indeed show pocket sixes, so I may have misplayed a hand in a pretty egregious way, but I at least dodge a $700 bullet on the river. She did end up giving back some of that money later on to local favorite Ness, who did the double check raise against her, getting her off of pocket aces, or at least she claimed. And I do think, by the way, that he was going to try to pull off what I call the white whale, the triple check raise. That's something that I have spent years looking for, but have still never seen anyone pull it off. I'm assuming that if anyone ever does, it pretty much has to be nut flush over second nut flush on the river, but still, at some point, it's going to happen. The triple check raise, I'm here for it when it does. Ness then fell victim to an all-in bluff by vlog watcher Benson, who's up from Vegas, and jumped into this game and almost immediately went into full-fledged beast mode, a stark contrast from me having been around all day and hardly winning any hands. We play for another hour or so before ultimately racking up and booking the loss. All right, a 10-hour session in the books, booking a $552 loss. One of the most disappointing sessions I've ever played in terms of my thoughts on my own play. You just can't afford to make mistakes like I made with the pocket aces there. And yes, I guess you could look at it in a sense of, and it's pretty bad luck that she happened to drill her set when she's going to have all the pocket pairs there. And if that doesn't happen, then my plan of playing a big pot against this other guy probably works out just fine. But the fact of the matter is, there's too much risk involved with allowing a third player into the pot, and I paid the price for it. Yes, I made that good river fold, but that's beside the point, really. Not a mistake you can make. If you're going to win in 2021 and now 2022 cash game poker, the games are too tough. Opponents, unless you're late at night and there's alcohol, bluff less than ever before. People know the game better. You cannot make stupid mistakes like that and expect to keep booking wins. And as a result of that one mistake, and that one mistake only, I do not book a win today, and a tough December continues as we enter the final week. Snow continuing to come down here in Reno, and it's kind of funny. There were a number of comments on the last vlog of people saying, like, I didn't know it snowed in Nevada. First of all, Nevada in Spanish, Sierra Nevada, that is, I believe, actually means snow-covered mountain range. And I know that most people only think of Nevada as Las Vegas, but basically, if you're more than 20 minutes north of Las Vegas throughout the entirety of the state, and it's one of the biggest states in terms of landmass in the United States, it snows everywhere. I actually don't know what I hear more, like people thinking that Reno is basically located on the shores of Lake Tahoe, when in reality it's an hour away, or people that also think that Reno and Vegas are very close to one another, when in reality it is 7 hours away. I don't know why some people really struggle to realize that, even though you don't have to obviously leave the state. This week's question of the week, which we do at the end of every vlog, we just kind of throw them in as bonus content after we show hands here, and you can always submit one in the comments or Instagram at Ben Deach. Aaron writes in saying, I enjoy your vlogs, however, do you only play at Peppermill because you're comfortable there? Are there any other poker rooms in Reno worth visiting to vlog? Yes and no is the answer to that question. I've shot a number of vlogs over at the Atlantis, but the game wasn't all too common there when I was shooting them, and now it's really not very common where they have a $5 game over there. Back in 2009, 2010, that was really the place to play here in Reno, but not as much anymore. There's also a room at the Silver Legacy and a room at the Grand Sierra Resort, but generally speaking, those rooms only have 1-2. And the times where they have a $5 game, it's going to be better at Peppermill during those hours anyway. You really want to, in any city, I would think, confine all the players to one room. That's just the best thing for the poker economy in general. That's why some consider LA the poker capital of the world over Las Vegas, because LA just has obviously a lot more people, but then fewer poker rooms. So it confines them to those rooms. So you have more games in one location as opposed to more games at a number of different locations, which is better for poker overall. And really, when you think about it, we talk about Nevada being one of the largest states in terms of landmass in the U.S. Outside of Vegas, the Peppermill is really the only place where you're going to find a consistent poker game that's above the 1-2 level. So yeah, that's generally speaking the reason why I play there, not because I have any agreed on loyalty to them or anything. It's just the only option, really. And it just so happens that they do many things right in that particular room. They have great management, as I've said before, and they set the standard in terms of lowest rake in the U.S. That's, I'm sure, the case, paying just $5 a half hour for a $5 no-limit game. I can't imagine anyone else beating that, no matter where you go. And if you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and follow me on Instagram at Ben Deach. And if you want to play poker when you're on the go, consider checking out the High Society group on Poker Bros. The link is in the description below. Use my referral code. We are back here next time, and we are not going to be slow playing pocket aces again.